friends, welcome to the channel. My name is Rahul, and in this video we'll be talking about 6 things that you should know before you move to Canada. So the first thing is friendly people. One of the very first things that you'll notice about Canadians is how friendly they are. If you're walking down the street, you'll notice people often say hello to you with a smile. And the first time that happened to me, I was a bit surprised and I thought, do I know that person? But yeah, people are generally very nice, but being friendly doesn't necessarily mean that it's easy to make friends. um, you often, when you live in big cities in apartments, you don't know who your neighbors are. Where I grew up in India, it was a bit different. We knew everybody in the neighborhood. We used to play with their kids and stuff like that. So, but if you're living in smaller cities, smaller towns, and you live in a friendly neighborhood like a house rather than an apartment, you may know your neighbor. You'll also hear a lot of sorries and thank yous. That's a trademark of Canadians to show how polite they are. There's also no discrimination based on what kind of job you have. So let's say if you're a plumber or company CEO, and if you go to a party, there will be no discrimination based on your state status. The second thing, and this is a big one, is the weather. When I decided to move to Canada, I had a little idea how cold it gets here based on my research, but trust me, the research was not enough. You read online, then it gets to -40, -50 in the winters, but I had no idea what that feels like. I'd never seen snow in my life. So the first time when I saw snow, I was so excited, and it was just out of the world experience. But I went out with my roommate and we decided to have a snowball fight, and I could not keep my hand out of my glove for too long because it was so cold. And when it was -40 for a few days, it was so cold I had to wear about 3 different layers of clothes on top of a winter coat that was almost as heavy as half of my weight. And it was, if you go out in that temperature, it's really difficult to breathe as well. I was so cold that I got off the bus and I to my apartment. I decided to run, and that was a mistake. Running in that -40 temperature is not a good idea because it makes it really difficult to breathe as well. It's not that you cannot live in that cold weather. You just have to dress appropriately, and you will hear a lot of people saying that wear the real layers, and that was the thing. Like, you have to have different layers during winter. And it's probably better if you buy the clothes here, because whatever clothes that I brought from India thinking that I would wear them in the winters were not good enough. They were only good enough for fall or spring weather. And the second thing is, not every part of Canada get same amount of winters or as bad winters as other parts. And we'll talk about those parts later in the video. The third point is where to move. Now, in some cases, you may choose to move some of the warmer places that we'll talk about, but you may not always have a choice about where you want to move. In my case, I have got an admission from University of Ottawa, which is in Ottawa, and it gets cold there. But this should give you an idea about how cold each state or province, as we call them here, gets in winter. So Canada has 10 provinces.
So these are the average temperature recorded last year in the month of December, and you can see on my left there is Victoria, and it gets as cold as 4 degrees during winters, while on the other hand there is Nova Scotia on the east coast, and it gets as low as -10 degrees over there. While if you look in the central area where there is Edmonton, Regina, Winnipeg, it gets quite cold, up to -21 degrees there. Quebec City gets really harsh winters as well. Toronto, on the other hand, is further down south, so it's not as bad over there. But it's clearly the British Columbia is a winner when it comes to cold weathers in Canada. Note that these are also the average temperature, and it does get much cooler than this.
Majority of people move to Ontario. I think 1/3 of the people move to Ontario. It's a bigger state and there is just lots of more opportunities there. And that's where I moved as well. It does get really cold in Ottawa. I think the time that I was there, I had faced -40 temperature. Not everything is bad about cold. You find ways to enjoy cold or embrace it when you're there. For example, one of the things that really intrigued me about Ottawa, and the reason I wanted to move there, is this: I'd seen this picture online. So this is a 40-kilometer canal that freezes in winter, and people skate on it. Needless to say, one of the first things I did when winter started in Ottawa was go skating on the canal, and I had no idea how to skate. And when I started skating, I mean ice skating, and I fell multiple times, but it was fun. I don't live in Ottawa anymore. I moved to Vancouver, which is in British Columbia, a few years ago, and it does not get as cold here, but you do see 1 week of snow if you're lucky. But if you want to enjoy, you can go to higher elevation where there are few mountains nearby, and you can do lots of winter activities.
like snowboarding or skiing or snowshoeing.
But it does rain here a lot. There are times that you don't see sun for a week or even longer, and it's always cloudy, and it can get a bit depressing in winter. One of the good thing about snow is in the evening when it gets dark earlier. Also, the snow is white, so it brightens up the evening. But in Vancouver, it's cold and there's no snow and it gets dark early. The fourth point is transit system, and the transit system in Canada is amazing. Most major cities have buses as well as trains, and they're very frequent, about every 3 to 5 minutes, depending on where. They are maintained very well, so they are very clean, and you can also take your bicycle or bike to trains as well as buses. Buses have this mounting points at the front where you can put your bike and go wherever you want, and then take the bike off. And in Vancouver, you can pay by cash in the buses or by credit card as well. You just tap it. You can also get these things called Compass card, which you can get at a SkyTrain station. They can be recharged there itself, or you can recharge them online as well. And most cities have that too. These cards can be used for buses as well as trains, and SkyTrains is what we call them in Vancouver. But you can also get a day pass if you are just looking to explore the city for a day, and it's pretty cheap. I think at $5 or something.
You'll also notice that many of the bus stops are actually heated, and it's such a blessing when it's really cold outside waiting for a bus.
Students who come here also get this pass from the university that they can use for buses and trains. If you live in a downtown area in a major city, there's a very good chance you will not need car for your day-to-day use, because you will have all the grocery stores and everything nearby. The fifth point is languages, and not many people know this. At least I did not know this, but Canada has two official languages, English and French. And the French they speak here is not quite the same as the French they speak in France. Majority of the people who speak French, they live in a province called Quebec, and most of the people who move to Quebec are actually, they go to this city called Montreal, and Montreal has a 50-50 ratio. Most people there speak English. So if you're moving to that city, you don't have to know French in advance, but if you do learn a little bit of basic French, then it will help you get in settle faster. I'm so far away from Quebec that I do not see any French influence, but if you go to airport, you'll see the signs both in English and French. Back when I was in Ottawa, you could see, because Ottawa is the capital city of Canada, you could see more of the French influence. And Quebec was just a bridge over across the river. So I tried to learn French there, but I didn't get too far. And now that I'm here, there's no much use of me learning French. The government also offer free classes for English and French as well. The sixth one is time zone and time change. And this is the really big one. Canada is the second largest country in the world geographically, and the majority of people live close to the US border because it's just way too cold up north. And because the country is spread east to west, you'll notice there are multiple time zones. So for example, if you're in British Columbia, which is in west coast, you'll be 4 hours behind Nova Scotia, which is on the eastern coast. And this time zone follow in the US as well. We have a few colleagues who work from Ontario, and they are 3 hours ahead of us. So scheduling meeting with them is always fun. The another thing is time change. In Canada, every year we change our times twice a year. So in March, we move our clock 1 hour forward, so you lose 1 hour, as compared to in November when we move our clock 1 hour backward, where you gain 1 hour. But the days are already short in winters. So let's say if it was getting dark at 5:30 in the evening, now that you moved your clock 1 hour backward, it will get dark at 4:30. It gets dark at 4:30
Up to December 21st.
and then it starts to get better over the time. It doesn't get bright early in the morning either. So let's say if you go to work at 8 in the morning and come back at 4:30 in the evening, it's possible that you may not see any daylight, and it can be depressing for people. I was talking about how snow actually helps you during winters when it gets darker earlier. In summer, it's just the opposite. The days are longer and longer, and it till December 31st, and it does not get dark here till 10 p.m. So earlier it was getting dark at 9 p.m. You move your clock 1 hour forward, and it gets dark at 10 p.m. It's also get brighter earlier in the day.
Now let's look at the summary real quick before we go. We talked about how friendly people are in Canada and how you may see a stranger saying hello to you walking down the street. Don't get freaked out by it. We saw how weather varies in different parts of Canada, especially in winters. Then we talked about how Canada has two different official languages and which part of Canada they are more predominant. Then we looked at the transit system in Canada and how amazing it is, how you also have heated bus stops and how frequent the buses are. Lastly, we talked about how Canada has different time zones and how we change our clocks here twice a year.
Well, those were the 6 things I thought you should know before you move to Canada. And let me know if you have any questions. And if you want to stay up to date with my latest video, you can click over there. See you in the next video. Bye.